The 12 would change the world. In a world shrouded by empire and silence, 12 ordinary men stood upon the edge of history. Fishermen, tax collectors, brothers, skeptics, men of no renown, drawn from dusty villages and crowded shores. Yet through them, heaven would speak. Through them, the world would tremble. Their story does not begin in power, nor in glory, but in a whisper carried by the wind across Galilee. A whisper that began with one voice, a teacher, gentle and fierce, whose words set hearts ablaze. "Follow me," he said. And they did. They could not have known that this call would lead them to the ends of the earth, to kings and prisons, to deserts and crosses. Each step they took behind the teacher was a step away from the lives they knew, and closer to the destiny God had prepared. In the quiet dawns by the sea, they learned to trust. In the roaring crowds of Jerusalem, they learned to stand. And in the shadow of the cross, they learned to believe. When their master was taken, betrayed, beaten, crucified, their hearts broke. The light they had followed seemed gone forever. But then, on the third day, the stone rolled away. Hope rose again, not just in an empty tomb, but in the hearts of those who would soon carry his message to the nations. From that moment, there was no turning back. These 12, flawed, frightened, and yet filled with divine fire, became the foundation of a faith that would reach the corners of the earth. They faced persecution, exile, hunger, and death, but they carried a truth stronger than fear, that love had conquered death, and that they had seen it with their own eyes. Their journeys would take them across continents, from Jerusalem to Rome, from India to Ethiopia. Each would walk a different road, but all would end the same way, in unwavering faith, sealed with sacrifice. Today, we remember their names, not as distant figures carved in stone, but as men who once laughed, wept, and bled for what they believed. Their courage lit the path for generations to come. Their voices still echo in cathedrals and deserts, in the quiet prayers of millions who follow the same call, "Come, follow me." And so, we begin their story, not as myth, but as memory, not as heroes beyond reach, but as hearts transformed by grace. This is the story of the 12 apostles, the men who carried the light into a darkened world. Brief cinematic pause. Now, let us journey with them, from the shores of Galilee to the gates of Rome, and witness how faith turned the weakest of men into the pillars of eternity. The journey of the 12-inch. Their story begins where faith first took root, in the hearts of men who once feared the waves, but learned to walk upon them. 1. Peter, the rock of faith. Among the 12, none burned brighter or faltered deeper than Peter, a fisherman from Galilee, quick to speak, fierce to love, and yet human enough to fall. He was the first to call Jesus the Christ, and the first to deny him when fear took hold. But even in his failure, grace found him again. After the resurrection, Peter became a flame that could not be extinguished. He preached in the marketplaces of Jerusalem, healing the sick, defying kings, and proclaiming the name of Christ without fear. They say he was crucified in Rome, upside down, because he felt unworthy to die as his Lord had died. And in that final moment, the fisherman became the rock upon which faith would stand for centuries. 2. Andrew, the bringer of hope. Andrew, Peter's brother, was quieter, a man who lived to bring others closer to the light. It was Andrew who first heard the call by the sea, and who brought his brother to meet the teacher. He spent his life doing the same, leading souls one by one, not through power but through kindness. Tradition says he carried the gospel to Greece, where he was crucified on a cross shaped like an X. Even as he hung upon it, Andrew's voice rose in praise, for he said the cross had become his greatest joy, the very symbol of the one he loved. 3. James the Greater, the son of thunder. James, the brother of John, was known for his boldness. He was among the first to leave his nets, among the few to witness the transfiguration. His temper burned hot, but so did his courage. He was the first apostle to be martyred, executed by the sword of King Herod in Jerusalem. Yet his death only fanned the flame of faith, as if heaven itself declared, "The word cannot be silenced." 4. John the Beloved. If Peter was the rock, John was the heart. He called himself a disciple whom Jesus loved. He stood at the foot of the cross when all others fled, and it was to him that Jesus entrusted his mother. John would live long after his brothers had fallen, carrying their memory and the message of love. In exile on the island of Patmos, he saw visions of heaven, the book of Revelation, and wrote of a future where every tear would be wiped away. His words remain like light in the darkness. In the beginning was the Word. 5. Philip, the questioner turned witness. Philip was a thinker, always searching, always asking. He once said, "Show us the Father, and it will be enough for us." And he was shown more than he ever imagined. He carried a message to Asia Minor, performing miracles, speaking truth to strangers. They say he was martyred in Hierapolis, bound upside down to a pillar, still preaching until his last breath. 6. Bartholomew, the fearless preacher, also known as Nathaniel. Bartholomew was honest from the start. "Can anything good come from Nazareth?" he once asked. Yet his faith grew stronger than his doubt. He traveled far, even to India and Armenia, where he shared the gospel with kings. Legends tell that he was flayed alive for refusing to deny Christ. And yet, even as his body failed, his spirit remained unbroken, a testament that truth endures beyond suffering. 7. Matthew, the redeemed tax collector. Once despised as a collector of Rome's taxes, Matthew's hands had touched corruption. But when Jesus said, "Follow me," he left everything, his coins, his comfort, his shame. He became the gospel writer, showing the world that mercy could rewrite any story. His words still echo with grace. "Blessed are the poor in spirit." Tradition says he preached in Ethiopia, where he died a martyr, not for gold, but for the truth he once sold. 8. Thomas, the doubter who believed. He has been remembered for one moment of doubt, but his faith was greater than his hesitation. When he saw the risen Christ, he fell to his knees and cried, "My Lord and my God." That faith drove him further than any other, to India, where he built the first Christian communities. He was pierced by the spears of his persecutors, but his final words were a prayer. Thomas's doubt became the doorway through which millions have entered belief. 9. James the Lesser, the silent shepherd. Little is known of him, but sometimes the quiet ones carry the greatest strength. He was a humble man, known for his wisdom and his prayers. As Bishop of Jerusalem, he guided the early church through persecution and fear. He was thrown from the temple walls and beaten to death, still forgiving his killers as he fell. His silence became a sermon, that faith needs no fame to shine. 10. Thaddeus Jude, the voice of encouragement. Thaddeus, also called Jude, carried a heart of compassion. In his letter, he wrote to the faithful, "Keep yourselves in the love of God." He journeyed with Simon to Persia, where they faced death together. His courage spoke softly but powerfully to a world that still needs hope. 11. Simon the Zealot, the warrior of the Spirit. Before he followed Christ, Simon was a zealot, a man of passion, ready to fight for freedom. But under Jesus, his sword turned into a message of peace. He carried that message across distant lands, from Egypt to Persia. Tradition holds that he was martyred by being sawn in half. Yet his spirit remained whole, a warrior transformed by love. 12. Matthias, the chosen after the fall. When Judas fell, the 11 prayed, and the lot fell upon Matthias. He stepped into a story already stained with betrayal, but he carried it with humility. Matthias spent his life preaching in Ethiopia, where he too faced martyrdom. He reminds us that even when one fails, God can raise another to carry the mission forward. Each of these men, flawed, frightened, faithful, became a living chapter in the greatest story ever told. Their courage was not born from power, but from presence. They had seen the risen Lord, and once a man has seen light that conquers death, he can never walk in darkness again. And though centuries have passed, their footprints remain, carved not in stone, but in hearts transformed by the same call that began beside the Sea of Galilee. Follow me. The legacy of light. Centuries have passed since the footsteps of the 12 echoed on the roads of the ancient world. Empires have risen and fallen. Languages have changed. But the flame they carried, the light of faith, still burns. They were not kings or conquerors. They held no armies, no crowns. Their weapons were words. Their victory was love. And their legacy is still being written. In every corner of the earth, their voices whisper through time. In the hymns of cathedrals, in the prayers of children, in the quiet hearts of those who still dare to believe. Peter's courage, Andrew's gentleness, John's love. These are not just memories. They are living seeds growing in each soul that answers the same call. Follow me. Their blood became the ink that wrote the story of salvation. Their tears watered the soil of faith. And from their sacrifice, a church was born, not made of stone, but hearts united in hope. Look closely and you will see them still. In every act of kindness, Peter's strength returns. In every whisper of forgiveness, John's compassion lives again. In every voice that stands for truth, the fire of James still burns. The story of the apostles is not just history. It is invitation. An invitation to walk the same road of faith, to bear light in a world that still knows darkness, to trust that even the smallest act of love can echo through eternity. For though they died long ago, the 12 never truly left us. Their footprints lead straight to the heart of the one they followed, the teacher who turned fishermen into saints, who turned fear into courage, and death into everlasting life. As the sun sets over the ancient lands where they once walked, their voices rise again, a chorus of faith that no empire could silence. And perhaps if we listen closely enough, we will still hear that same voice that once called out over Galilee. Soft, steady, eternal. Come, follow me. Long cinematic pause, soft instrumental ending. Because the story of the apostles is not a story that ends. It is a story that begins again each time a heart believes.